Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Starrapter and this is my review for Star Wars Catalyst. This is the prequel novel to Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Now just to start things off, this is a spoiler-free review, but I'm also doing a spoiler-filled discussion for all you people that don't want to read the book / don't care about spoilers. I will be posting that shortly after this, so stay tuned for that. So first off, this is written by James Luceno, who some of you might have remembered did Darth Plagueis as well as the canon novel Tarkin. So this guy knows his Star Wars, there is no doubt about that. I actually had the privilege of hearing James Luceno speak at the New York Comic Con, the Writers Roundtable panel. He was talking about this novel in particular. He said, this is essential reading for Rogue One, a Star Wars story before you go see the movie. And I highly agree with that. So first off, I'm going to get into the plot, give you guys a little bit of a synopsis of what exactly is going on in this novel. So this novel takes place, it starts out in the Clone Wars. That's right, in the Clone Wars, a little bit after Attack of the Clones. We have Galen Erso and his wife Lyra Erso. They are both working as researchers, and Galen Erso is one of the most brilliant people in basically the galaxy at that point. He is one of the lead scientists on developing this sustainable energy harnessed from these crystals. So then we also have the character of Orson Krennic, who at this point is in the Republic, but he is a lieutenant commander, and he is kind of working on this secret project that the Republic is developing, which is going to be the Death Star. And his aspirations are, he wants to be promoted, he wants to work his way up to get closer to that seat next to Palpatine. So he is trying any way he can to weasel his way in there. He's on the ground level trying to work his way up, and he proposes a plan to Massa Maida, who is at that point the assistant of Palpatine, that hey, he has a guy that could speed up the process of this super weapon, because they are at a standstill for developing this weapon, and they need to basically harness this energy. Okay, so pretty early on in the novel, Galen gets captured by the Separatists. They want to use him for their plans for their battle station. If you guys remember, in Attack of the Clones, Dooku had the holocron, the datacron of the Death Star plans. So the Separatists want to build that, and the Republic is trying to counter them, building their weapon of their own, which Krennic is working on. So Krennic had the brilliant idea of, hey, he heard his friend Galen is, in prison. If he breaks them out, that means Galen will be indebted to Krennic, and eventually Krennic will be able to break him and put him into this program. However, Galen is very neutral in this whole wartime during the Clone Wars. He is neither with the Separatists, and he is neither with the Republic. It's up to Krennic to kind of provide that push to get Galen to eventually work for him to get him into that program. And the thing is with the Republic is nobody that is working, all the scientists that are working on this thing, they don't know what they're actually making. It's all compartmentalized brilliantly by the few people in the Republic that know what is going on with this Death Star. So you have people over here making some kind of shields, you have people here making over some kind of turbo lasers. They don't know who's working on what. They kind of keep it a secret. So eventually, as the story goes on, Krennic gets him into the Republic, and eventually time changes and it becomes the Empire, and we start to see that Galen becomes more in turn like okay with being in the Empire at that point. He had no allegiance before, he was neutral, working for Zerpan Industries, but now he accepts that the Palpatine, he respects the guy, and he wants to basically work for the Empire, and he sees it as all good. And eventually things get a little bit rough, and I'm not going to ruin that part of the story, but just sum it all up. Basically the story is Krennic is trying to pull Galen from his family to continue working on this thing, while Galen's wife Lyra is trying to pull him back to the family, because Lyra is like a detective and is trying to find out that some things are not all what they're cracked up to be with this Empire. And that is basically my long-winded gist of the story, leaving out a lot of different details. Again, I'm going to be putting that spoiler-filled discussion on this channel very, very soon. But let me, guys, talk to you about my specific positives of what I really enjoyed about this overall novel. First off, they did great groundwork for the Erso family. This novel, James Luceno did a great job. Right from that very first page, we get an understanding of the character that Galen Erso is. He is a scientist that only knows how to do one thing, and that is to work on his science, that is to research, that is to find the mysteries of what happens with these kyber crystals. But then in the same token, he's got this relationship with his wife, Lyra Erso, and she is a very supportive wife, but as the story goes on, she becomes less and less enthused to be around him because he starts to get obsessed with his work. And then at the same time, we are introduced to the protagonist of Rogue One, Jyn Erso, and we see her from the moment she is birthed, actually when she was in the womb of Lyra, to the point where I think she's like 4 years old by the time this story ends. So we see a great deal of her and how she is a defiant child from that early age that we see her eventually in trouble in Rogue One. So it does a great job of really introducing us to this family before we see them on the big screen. Next character I want to talk about, of course, is Orson Krennic. Now this character really intrigued me because, as I said before, he is this character that is moving his way up in the chain of command of the Empire in very different kind of ways. This character Krennic, he gets what he wants in any way he can, and that means sometimes breaking his chain of command and kind of speaking against his upper people in the Empire. He will do that. He will take actions into his own hands to get what he wants. And he is just he's got guile, he's got determination, and his life's work is to basically be in charge of the Death Star. And of course he's going to have adversaries in the Empire that he's battling at the same time as he's trying to win over Galen Erso, which it's a really cool personal storyline between those characters. Also, and this is what I love about James Luceno as the writer, is he always writes with like a huge broad spectrum of the galaxy of Star Wars. So we see a ton of planets. We see Coruscant a lot. We see a whole bunch of planets we've never heard of. There's always some place that we're going, and I really appreciate that, as opposed to staying on the same planet for the whole duration of this this novel is like 330 pages, so I appreciate that we're kind of going places. It makes the flow much greater in my eyes. Another thing is I didn't expect to have this many Clone Wars references to this story. This is really one of those stories that is kind of like the bridge between Clone Wars and Empire, and we see that really like focused entirely in this novel. I mean, we start in Clone Wars and we end in like kind of the early era of the Empire, and through that we're getting references to certain episodes, certain characters, certain storylines all over the place, and it's just really awesome. If you're a fan, if you watch Clone Wars, you're gonna love this novel because there's so many little nitty-gritty details that you're gonna say, I remember that, so that's what they did with that thing, or you know, vice for anything really. And as I said, the transition from the Clone Wars to the Empire was really cool. I mean, we don't really ever see a neutral side of the Clone Wars that much. I mean, seeing Galen and Lyra's perspective on the Republic almost as being very oppressive, even in the later stages of the Republic, and then seeing Galen later on kind of talking about the Empire as being, you know, pretty okay, and he doesn't have much of a problem with it. And it's really interesting perspective. Another thing I want to talk about is how much detail they get into the kyber crystals. And again, I don't want to really get into too much because it could get into kind of spoilery territory, but I really liked how much information James really put into the exploration with Galen in particular. He's really exploring how to harness this energy, and at the same time the Empire wants him to use what he thinks is conservative energy as a directional kind of military strength. So it's really awesome how they pulled that off. I really like how much research we kind of find out. And finally, I just want to hit home again how great of a writer James Luceno really is. This guy, when he explores an environment and explains what's going on in an environment, he really depicts it very well. In my mind, I could imagine where these characters were, what they were doing, what it looked like around them. This guy has been writing Star Wars for a very long time, as I mentioned, and this is definitely one of the best things he's done that I've read, for sure. So that being said, I do have just a few things I want to talk about that I didn't like so much about this novel. First off, it's really a kind of a slower kind of burn kind of novel. Not in too bad of a way. They could have used a little bit more action sequences throughout. In the beginning of the novel, we did get a really cool, nice action scene, but after that, there was just few and far between. A lot of dialogue. Again, this is a very personal story. I think that's the key here to understand, guys. This is not your normal Star Wars-y type action. Yes, we get that a few times in this novel, but it's not dominant throughout. And one final thing is I want to talk about how some certain things that happen in this novel seemed a little bit too convenient for the characters. Like, of course that would have happened. You know, like just certain things that they survive or whatever just seemed like, okay, yeah, that's a little far-fetched. But other than that, guys, I really enjoyed Star Wars Catalyst, a Rogue One novel. My final score for this will be a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I really liked this novel. As soon as I finished this novel, I had a greater appreciation of Galen Erso, Lyra Erso, Jyn Erso, Krennic, a few other side characters that I'll tease because we do get to see some characters that we all know and love. But again, I'll save that for the spoiler discussion video. I really wanted to watch every trailer again. I immediately watched every trailer, and automatically I had a much greater emotional attachment to these characters. I want to go back and watch the Clone Wars pretty much from start to finish. I want to go back and watch Attack of the Clones. It's that kind of polarizing effect that makes me want to keep reading these novels, is they give you a greater appreciation of, you know, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. It just fleshes out everything else and gives you a whole new perspective of what you're watching. So guys, that is going to do it for my review of Star Wars Catalyst. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of Star Wars Catalyst. Are you reading it? For me, this is probably my top 3 of Star Wars novels. This is up there with Bloodline and Lords of the Sith. I really like this novel. Please guys, make sure you go share this video with all your friends. If you aren't subscribed, please help me out and subscribe because you'll never miss another one of my videos. Thanks for watching. I'm Starrapter, and may the Force be with you always. So, did you like the video? Then make sure you rate it a thumbs up, and if you did that, go over there, hit that Starrapter head to subscribe to my channel. Doing so will keep you up to speed on all of my latest content. Speaking of which, you can see a couple of my recent uploads down below. I'm also on social media, so what are you waiting for? Let's start nerding out.